China still hasn't responded to the publication of explosive secret documents which directly links top Chinese leaders, including President Xi Jinping, to a crackdown on Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province. The classified Chinese state documents include speeches which allegedly prove senior government leaders had called for measures that led to mass internment and forced labour. China has consistently denied that it's committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims. David Tobin is a lecturer in East Asian Studies at the University of Sheffield and author of Securing China's Northwest Frontier, Identity and Insecurity in Xinjiang. He's one of just a handful of people who's reviewed the documents. David Tobin, welcome to Breakfast.
Thank you for having me on.
David, these documents, I understand, were leaked to the Uyghur Tribunal, which is a British-based independent tribunal. They received them in September. You've reviewed them. What do they reveal?
The key point I would take away is about the chain of command. The documents don't necessarily reveal too much new information. Most of the policy content we've known about for some time. This is the first time we've really seen direct orders from the centre. So the content matches what we've observed with the rise in mosque demolitions, mass internment, coercive birth controls, forced labour, and then population optimisation as a euphemism for dispersal. But this really is the most significant evidence that these specific practices are designed and policed by the top levels of the party state.
And
obviously people who study Chinese politics know this anyway. This is how the system works. But this is concrete evidence.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. And they seem to reveal, it goes to the very top. I mean, can you give us an example of what the document shows about the alleged involvement of President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Keqiang in implementing policies against Uyghur Muslims?
The big thing I would say there is the chronology is very important. The first set of speeches that are analysed by Dr. Zenz are from 2014, so this is early on in Xi Jinping's reign. Really making new policy, in the language of orders, a fiery language that you don't normally see in official documents that are publicly available. And then after that, you see Li Keqiang making speeches to round people up. So we knew that Li Keqiang was appointed by Xi to do the job he's been asked to do. But this looks like much more solid evidence that Li Keqiang was following orders from Xi by using the same language and the same ideas that Xi had put out in 2014. Then by 2017 and 18, a lot of the speeches are really about reining in local leaders, the language of implementation, loose management, reining them in. Who's really saying these policies aren't being implemented harshly enough, and Xi is threatening local leaders that they must implement more carefully.
In one excerpt of the speech that I've seen, she talks about calls for a crushing blow to buy us time. What was that in the context of?
This type of language is very general. It's just standard Chinese politics. There's always a big story in these documents. This is the type of stuff I work with, a narrative of Chinese history, and it's vague language that for an Anglophone audience, it may seem a little unfamiliar, a little unusual if we're used to sort of rule of law, or rules and laws are expressed very clearly. This type of ideological language is very standard. So, and it's the way censorship, for example, works in China. People don't know where the red line is, so they stay out of trouble by just not getting involved in politics. And that's the centre-periphery relationship in China, and the relationship between central party state and local leaders. That kind of fiery language is really it's threatening for local leaders, saying you have to implement these orders or you're going to be in trouble. It doesn't always match a very specific policy, but that's the type of language that's used to justify all the policies that we're describing. And it's really, the report that Adrian Zenz has produced focuses on the coercive birth controls, the mass internment, forced labour. But you even see this in the more detailed policies on what's called Sunnicisation of religion, orders not to build new mosques and so forth. But the specific policies are always framed through that fiery language that China's in crisis and it needs to be fixed.
And perhaps the most chilling elements of it are the sort of the messages about which lead to these accusations of, a call for cultural genocide. The elements of some of the speeches from the leaders who, for instance, there's one from Xinjiang's party secretary, Chen Quanghao, saying, round up all who should be rounded up. And then there's, in one of Xi's speeches, it says population proportion and population security are important foundations for long-term peace and stability. The suggestion is the message was to round up, separate the Uyghurs, stop them populating while the Han population can increase. Was that a clear direction in these documents?
Absolutely. The round up all those who should be round up. Again, we're asked, what does that really mean? But it's deliberately arbitrary. That's how the rounding any people up works. If you're going to round up millions of people, you can't have a systematic process. It's chaos. You have to essentially pick on random people, and cadres have quotas to collect people and so forth. So that phrase really, it really maps onto the type of work it did, even as far back as 2009. Patriotic education textbooks for cadres and students were really saying that, quote, Uyghurs are not a Turkic group. Uyghurs are not an Islamic group. Only terrorists would say this.
Okay.
So that really implies it's the Uyghur people. It's not organisations or terrorists. It is the Uyghur people that are to be rounded up.
David, just finally and briefly, these documents were leaked to the British-based Uyghur Tribunal in September. Do we know who's leaked them? Would it have to be someone from within the CCP?
I have no idea. I would love to know, but that's not the kind of thing I would be getting told.
Okay. All right. David, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
David Tobin is a lecturer in East Asian Studies at the University of Sheffield and author of Securing China's Northwest Frontier, Identity and Insecurity in Xinjiang.